Ethan Alexander Sterling, 38 years old, a net worth of $2.4 billion, and a void in his soul that no amount of money could ever fill. December 15th, 2025, 11:47 p.m., Michigan Avenue, Chicago. A relentless, biting rain. Ethan was on his way home after another 16-hour day. Slumped in the back of his Cadillac Escalade, he stared blankly out the window, not really seeing anything. His driver stopped at a red light, and then Ethan saw something that stopped his world. Cold, on the ground, huddled beneath a flickering awning. A woman slept on a tattered piece of cardboard. In her arms, a baby wrapped in rags. She was curled protectively around the child, shielding it from the driving rain, her damp, dark hair plastered to her face, calloused hands clinging to the baby against her chest. Ethan felt like he'd been punched in the gut. His heart leaped into his throat, a wave of recognition. So violent, it almost knocked him breathless for 3 long seconds. It wasn't simple compassion. It wasn't pity. It was something far deeper, far more ancient. His soul was screaming a name his rational mind couldn't comprehend. Isolde. Ethan blinked. He tried to shake off the thought, but the feeling wouldn't subside. His chest ached. His hands trembled. "Open the door," he ordered his driver. His voice was hoarse, foreign even to his own ears. The driver glanced back in confusion. "Mr. Sterling." "Open the door, now," Ethan repeated. The driver obeyed. Ethan stepped out of the car. The rain immediately soaked through his $15,000 suit. He didn't even notice. He walked toward the woman on the ground. Up close, she was even younger than he'd thought. Maybe 28, too thin, clothes torn and worn. But even through the grime and the poverty, there was something about her. Something that made Ethan's heart ache with a strange, almost unbearable familiarity. He crouched down beside her. He reached out, hesitating, to touch her shoulder. The moment his fingers brushed the damp fabric of her blouse, the woman startled awake. Her eyes snapped open, green, as deep as the ocean. And when her eyes met his, Ethan saw. It wasn't a memory. It was a vision. A flash, lasting less than 2 seconds, that struck him like lightning. A garden, white roses, a crescent-shaped fountain, a woman in a medieval gold dress, a dark-skinned man in chains, his wrists bound, hands entwined, whispers in ancient Spanish, "Te encontraré en cada vida, I will find you in every life." The vision vanished as quickly as it came. Ethan blinked, stunned, his heart pounding in his chest. The woman stared back at him, her eyes wide with shock. She'd felt it too. Ethan was sure of it. There was recognition in her gaze. She recoiled, clutching the baby tighter. "Don't come any closer," she whispered. Her voice was raspy with exhaustion, but firm. "I have a knife." Ethan raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. I saw you here and—" "And what?" the woman interrupted, still wary. "Are you going to give me some spare change? I don't need it." The baby began to cry. She immediately began to rock him, murmuring soft words in Spanish. "Shh, Matthew, it's all right. Mi amor. Mommy's here." Ethan looked at the baby, 2 months old, maybe, wrapped in a blanket that had once been white but was now gray with dirt, something inside him. Shattered. "When was the last time you ate?" Ethan asked. The woman didn't answer. Her green eyes just stared at him, a mixture of wounded pride and silent desperation. "There's a hotel 3 blocks from here," Ethan said. "Let me pay for a room for you. 1 night, hot food, a hot bath, for the baby." She hesitated. Ethan saw the internal battle raging on her face. Pride versus necessity. "I don't want your money," she finally said. "But Matthew, he's had a fever for 2 days. Then accept it. For your son." Silence. The rain hammered down around them. Ethan was soaked to the bone, but he didn't move. The woman finally nodded, a barely perceptible movement. Ethan helped her to her feet, The moment he took her arm to steady her, another vision slammed into him, faster this time. A public square, a screaming mob, a man being dragged toward the gallows. He turned, his desperate eyes searching for someone, and then he saw her, a woman in a gold dress running toward him, her dark hair flying loose, her face streaked with tears. Isolde, no. The vision ended. Ethan dropped her arm abruptly, gasping for air. "You," the woman whispered. Her eyes were brimming with tears. "You saw it too, didn't you?" Ethan couldn't answer. His throat was constricted. The driver opened the car door. Ethan helped the woman and the baby inside. He sat next to her in the back seat. There was a foot of space between them, but Ethan felt like there was an invisible cord pulling him toward her. "What's your name?" he finally asked. "Lucy. Lucy Morales." Lucy. The name escaped his lips like a prayer. "I'm Ethan." "I know who you are," Lucy said softly, staring out the window. "Everyone knows Ethan Sterling, the billionaire, the man who builds empires." She said it without bitterness, just as a matter of fact. Ethan watched her in silence, her profile illuminated by the streetlights. Wet hair plastered to the side of her face, her chin held high despite her circumstances. There was a strength in her, a dignity that poverty hadn't managed to break, and suddenly Ethan understood why he couldn't stop looking at her. It wasn't physical attraction, although she was beautiful in a simple, honest way. It was recognition. It was the terrifying and wonderful feeling that his soul had known hers for far, far longer than his mind could ever comprehend. The car pulled up in front of the Drake Hotel, one of the 5-star hotels Ethan owned. The night manager almost fell out of his chair when he saw the owner walking into the lobby at 11:56 p.m., soaking wet, accompanied by a woman in rags holding a baby. "Mr. Sterling," the manager stammered, "we weren't expecting you." "Presidential suite," Ethan ordered. "Now, hot food, clean clothes for the lady, a doctor for the baby." The manager didn't ask any questions. Within 10 minutes, Lucy and Matthew were in a 2,000-square-foot suite that cost $3,000 a night. Lucy stood in the middle of the room, holding Matthew, looking around as if she'd just landed on another planet. Ethan watched as she touched the velvet sofa with her fingertips, wonderment and sorrow mixed on her face. "How long have you been on the streets?" Ethan asked gently. 3 months, Lucy replied. "Since Matthew was born. And his father?" "He disappeared when he found out I was pregnant." Lucy said it without emotion, like she was reporting the weather forecast. "I was a nurse. I lost my job when the pregnancy started affecting my shifts. I couldn't pay the rent. I got evicted." Her family? "I don't have one," she said. "My mum passed away when I was 14. I never knew my father." Ethan felt a sharp pang in his chest. "You're alone." "No," Isolde said, looking at Matthew. "I have him." But the doctor arrived 15 minutes later. He examined Matthew, diagnosed a mild respiratory infection, and prescribed antibiotics. The baby would be fine. When the doctor left, Isolde finally allowed herself to relax. She sat on the sofa, Matthew sleeping in her arms. Ethan sat in the armchair opposite her. He observed in silence. "Why are you doing this?" Isolde asked suddenly. "Why are you helping me?" Ethan didn't have an answer. Or rather, he had an answer that sounded completely insane, because when I looked at you, I felt like I had waited 600 years for this moment. But he didn't say that. Instead, he replied, "Because you need help." Isolde studied him for a long moment. "You felt it, didn't you? When you touched me, you saw something." Ethan froze. "Yes, I did too," Isolde whispered. "I saw a garden, and you, but you were different. Your clothes, everything was old." Ethan leaned forward. "Oh, what else did you see?" "A man. He was being taken away. Someone was crying. I think it was me." Isolde shook her head, as if trying to shake off the memory. "It doesn't make sense." I must be going crazy. You're not crazy, Ethan said. His voice sounded more intense than he intended. I saw the same thing. Their eyes met. For a moment, the world around them disappeared. It was just them, and the growing certainty that something impossible was happening. Isolde broke eye contact first. She stood up. Thank you for the room, for the doctor, but I'm leaving in the morning. No, Ethan said, also standing up. Stay, at least until Matthew is better. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. Ethan searched for words. I need someone to work at the mansion, cleaning, organizing. You said you were a nurse. My mother is ill. She needs care. That was partially true. His mother had early onset Parkinson's. But the real truth was that Ethan couldn't bear the idea of Isolde disappearing, not before understanding what was happening between them. Isolde stared at him suspiciously. You're inventing a job for me. I'm offering a real job, fair salary, room and board included. You and Matthew would have a safe place to stay. Silence. Ethan saw the war happening inside her. Finally, she asked, how much? $5,000 a week, Ethan replied. That was 3 times the average salary for a housekeeper in Chicago, and a separate suite in the staff wing, complete privacy. Why are you doing this? Isolde asked again, green eyes piercing his. For real. Ethan took a deep breath. Because when I looked at you, I felt like my soul knows you, and I need to understand why. The brutal honesty of the answer left them both in silence. Finally, Isolde nodded. 1 week. I'll try it for 1 week. Ethan felt something like relief flood his chest. Deal! He turned to leave, but before he reached the door, he stopped, turned around. Isolde, he said, do you have any birthmarks? Anything unusual? Isolde's expression changed. Slowly, she extended her right arm, pulled up the torn sleeve, revealing her wrist. There, on the fair skin of her inner wrist, was a mark. Small, dark, shaped like a crescent moon. Ethan felt the floor disappear beneath his feet. With trembling hands, he began to take off his jacket, then his tie. Then he unbuttoned the first 3 buttons of his shirt, pulled the fabric aside, revealing his left shoulder. Isolde let out a small gasp of shock. On Ethan's shoulder, exactly the same size, exactly the same shade, was an identical mark, a crescent moon. They both stood motionless, staring at the marks, at the impossibility of 2 identical birthmarks on 2 people who had just met. How? Isolde whispered. How is that possible? Ethan had no answer. His rational mind said it was coincidence, but his entire body was vibrating with a certainty that transcended logic. This isn't the first time we've met, he said quietly. I don't know how I know, but I do. Isolde stared at him. Tears glistened in her green eyes. I know too, she admitted, and it scares me. Ethan took a step towards her, then stopped. There were so many questions, so many impossible things happening. Rest, he finally said. We'll talk in the morning. But as he left the room, Ethan knew he wouldn't be able to sleep. Not with his mind racing, not with the feeling of Isolde's skin still burning on his fingertips, not with the vision of that garden, that square, that woman shouting his name. Isabella. Who was Isabella? And why, when he looked at Isolde, did Ethan feel like he had finally found something he had been searching for in every person he had ever met? Ethan Sterling didn't believe in fate, didn't believe in soulmates, didn't believe in reincarnation, but at 11:47 p.m. on December 15th, 2025, in the pouring rain, something inside him recognized something inside her, and it changed everything. If you've ever looked at someone and felt a connection you can't explain, if you've ever had the strange sensation of knowing someone you just met, if you've ever felt that your soul recognizes someone your mind shouldn't remember, then you'll understand what happened that night. Because some connections don't start when you meet someone, they just continue. Ethan arrived home at 2:30 in the morning. His 16,000-square-foot mansion on the Gold Coast was silent. He went straight to his bedroom. Didn't change. Just lay down on the bed, still in his wet clothes, staring at the ceiling. He closed his eyes, and immediately the visions returned, this time clearer, longer. A garden, night, a full moon in the sky. He was kneeling among the rose bushes, hands digging in the earth. No, not his hand, they were darker, scarred, chains on his wrists. A female voice whispered behind him, "Khalid." He turned around, and there she was. Not Isolde, but at the same time, it was Isolde. Same green eyes, same heart-shaped face, but wearing a medieval gold dress, black hair down to her waist, jewelry on her neck. "Isabella," he heard his own voice say, but it wasn't his voice. It was deeper, with an accent he didn't recognize. "You shouldn't be here. If they see us, I don't care," she said. "Khalid, I can't stay away from you." In the vision, Ethan felt emotions that weren't his. Desperate love, paralyzing fear, forbidden desire. Isabella approached, touched his face. When he felt her face pressed into his palm, Ethan felt a pain so sharp in his chest that he woke up gasping. He sat up in bed, sweating, heart pounding violently. The clock read 3:15 a.m. Ethan got out of bed. He went to the bathroom, turned on the faucet, splashed cold water on his face. When he looked in the mirror, for a fraction of a second, he saw another face reflected. Younger, olive skin, dark hair, deep brown eyes. He blinked, and it was just him again. Ethan Sterling, 38 years old, CEO, billionaire, rational, but no longer so certain of anything. He pulled his shirt aside again, looked at the crescent moon birthmark on his shoulder. Something he'd always had, something he'd never questioned, until now. Ethan grabbed his phone, searched crescent moon birthmark meaning. The results talked about melanocytes, pigmentation cells, genetics, nothing supernatural. He changed the search. 2 people, same birthmark. Rare coincidence but possible, said a medical article. Ethan tossed the phone onto the bed. It wasn't coincidence. He knew it. The same way he knew the sun rises in the east. The same way he knew his own name. He knew Lucy, not from 3 hours ago, from much, much longer ago. But how? And where did these visions come from? This garden, this woman named Isolde, this man named Matthew. Ethan didn't sleep for the rest of the night. He just sat in the armchair in his room, looking out the window at the city, waiting for dawn, and thinking about green eyes he'd known for 600 years. At 7 a.m., Ethan was back at the Drake Hotel. He went straight up to the presidential suite, knocked on the door. Lucy opened it. She'd taken a shower, was wearing clean clothes the hotel had provided, brown hair still damp, loose over her shoulders. No makeup, simple. And even so, Ethan needed to hold onto the doorframe to keep from staggering from the wave of emotion that hit him when he saw her. "Good morning," Lucy said. Her voice was cautious. "Good morning." Ethan glanced inside the suite. "Is Matthew better?" "Much. The antibiotics are already working." Lucy took a step back. "Do you want to come in?" Ethan went in. The suite was impeccably tidy. Lucy had folded all the towels, arranged all the pillows, left everything perfectly in place. "Nurse's habit," she said, noticing his look. "I can't stand disorder." Ethan nodded, sat down on the sofa. Lucy sat in the armchair across from him, keeping her distance. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "No. Did you?" "Neither did I." Silence. They both knew why. Finally, Ethan said, "I had visions all night. Did you too?" Lucy nodded slowly. "Yes. I saw a garden, a palace, people in old clothes, and you. But it wasn't you. He was younger, darker skin. But the eyes were yours." "Matthew," Ethan said. "His name was Matthew. I don't know how I know that, but I do. And her name was Isolde," Lucy whispered. "Princess Isolde." Ethan stared at her. "How do you know that?" "I heard it in the visions. You, him, Matthew. That's what he called her." For a long moment, they just stared at each other. 2 strangers who weren't strangers. Two people who'd just met but who'd known each other for centuries. "This is crazy," Lucy said, her voice trembling. "None of this makes sense." "I know. Identical birthmarks are a coincidence. Visions are just dreams. The feeling of knowing someone is just... Her voice failed. Tears started to stream down her face. Ethan didn't think. He just stood up, crossed the distance between them, knelt down in front of her. "Hey," he said softly. "It's okay." "It's not okay," Lucy sobbed. "I'm seeing things, feeling things. You're a billionaire and I'm a nobody. And yet, when I look at you, I feel... What do you feel?" Ethan asked, his voice husky. Lucy looked at him, green eyes swimming in tears. "Like I've come home." Ethan felt something inside him break and come back together at the same time. He reached out, touched her face, wiped away a tear with his thumb. The moment his skin touched hers, the vision came again, but this time they both saw it, together, at the same time. A garden at night, a crescent moon fountain, Matthew and Isolde holding hands. He took something out of his pocket, a silver locket, in the shape of a crescent moon. "So you never forget," he said, "that I'm yours and you're mine, in every life." Isolde took the locket, wept, and then, to forever seal the promise. They marked their skins. Matthew had a tattoo put on his shoulder, Isolde on her wrist, both in the shape of a crescent moon. The vision ended. Ethan and Lucy snapped back to the present at the same time, gasping, looking at each other with absolute shock. "You saw it," Ethan whispered. It wasn't a question. "I saw it," Lucy confirmed. "The marks. They made the marks. On purpose, to find each other again." Ethan looked at her wrist, then at his own shoulder. The marks they'd always had. Marks they thought were just birthmarks. But they weren't. They were promises. Promises from 600 years ago. "We are them," Lucy whispered, just somehow. "We're Matthew and Isolde." Ethan's rational mind wanted to deny it, but his body, his soul, every cell of his being was screaming yes. He was still kneeling in front of her, still touching her face. So close he could count every eyelash, see every shade of green in her eyes. And then Matthew started to cry in the next room. The moment shattered. Lucy blinked, snapping back to reality. She stood up quickly. "Excuse me." "He's hungry." She practically ran into the other room. Ethan stayed kneeling on the floor, his hand still in the air where her face had been seconds ago. What was happening to them? And more importantly, what was he going to do about it? Because Ethan Sterling was used to controlling everything in his life, his business, his emotions, his destiny. But this connection with Lucy, these visions, these marks, this was completely out of his control. And for the first time in 38 years, Ethan wasn't sure he wanted to control it. Maybe, just maybe, some things were destined to happen, no matter how long it took. 2 days later, Lucy Morales entered Ethan Sterling's mansion for the first time, and immediately felt like she'd been there before. Ethan's driver had picked her and Matthew up from the hotel. The 20-minute drive to Lincoln Park was silent. Lucy stared out the window, holding Matthew close to her chest, trying to process how her life had changed so drastically in 48 hours. When the iron gate opened and the mansion came into view, Lucy caught her breath. It was huge. 3 stories of modern architecture, glass and stone, impeccably manicured garden, fountain at the entrance, and something about it all felt strangely familiar. The driver stopped at a side entrance, the employee entrance, he explained. A woman, maybe 60 years old, was waiting. Her grey hair pulled back into a bun, navy blue suit, a friendly yet professional expression. "You must be Lucy," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Eleanor Vargas, Mr. Sterling's executive assistant for the past 20 years. It's a pleasure to meet you," Lucy replied, shaking her hand. Eleanor glanced at Matthew, and her face softened. And this must be Matthew. He's adorable. I've already arranged for a crib to be placed in your room. Thank you. Eleanor led her inside. The mansion was even more impressive on the inside. Marble floors, mahogany staircases, artwork on the walls that Lucy was sure was worth more than everything she'd ever owned in her life. But it wasn't the wealth that disturbed her. It was the feeling of recognition, like her feet knew the way, like her body remembered to turn left before Eleanor even told her to. Her room was in the East Wing, the employee area, smaller compared to the rest of the mansion, but larger and more beautiful than any place Lucy had ever lived. There was a queen-sized bed, a brand new crib beside it, a private bathroom, a window overlooking the garden, and something else. Lucy walked into the room and went straight to the window. She looked out, and she saw it. The garden. Not Ethan Sterling's modern garden, but the garden from the vision. She could almost see the white roses, the crescent moon-shaped fountain, the shadows where Khalid and Isolde met. "Are you all right?" Eleanor asked, concerned. Lucy blinked, returning to the present. "Yes. Sorry. It's just very beautiful." Eleanor smiled. "Mr. Sterling said for you to get settled in today. Start work tomorrow. Your primary responsibility will be caring for his mother, Mrs. Sterling. She has early-stage Parkinson's. Needs help with medication, basic physical therapy, companionship." Lucy nodded. "I'm a nurse. I can help." "Wonderful. Mrs. Sterling will adore you." Eleanor hesitated for a moment, then asked, "May I ask a personal question?" "Of course. How did you two meet?" "You and Mr. Sterling?" Lucy didn't know what to say. The truth sounded insane. "He saw me sleeping on the street and felt that my soul was his soulmate from 600 years ago. So she simply said, he helped me when I needed it." Eleanor studied her for a long moment. There was something in her gaze, as if she knew there was more to the story. "He's changed," Eleanor said softly. "In the last 2 days. I've worked with Ethan for 20 years. I've never seen him like this." "Like what?" "Troubled, distracted, and at the same time, more alive than ever." Before Lucy could respond, a male voice echoed from the hallway. "Eleanor, where did you put the report on?" Ethan appeared in the doorway. He stopped abruptly when he saw Lucy. Their eyes met, and for the 3rd day in a row, Lucy felt that impossible connection, like an electric current running through the air between them. "Mr. Sterling," Eleanor said formally, "I was just showing Ms. Morales to her room." Ethan didn't take his eyes off Lucy. "Great. Thank you, Eleanor." It was a clear dismissal. Eleanor left, closing the door behind her. Ethan and Lucy were alone, Matthew sleeping in the crib, a loaded silence between them. "Are you all right?" Ethan finally asked. "Yes, the room is. It's perfect. Thank you." Ethan nodded. He took a step inside, another, as if he couldn't keep his distance. "Lucy, I know this is all strange, but I want you to know that you're safe here. If at any moment you feel uncomfortable—" "I know," Lucy interrupted gently. "You don't have to explain." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, as if he were trying to memorize every detail of her face. "I can't stop thinking about you," he confessed suddenly. "The visions, the marks. I've been researching for 2 days. Reincarnation, past lives, genetic memories, and nothing explains what's happening." Lucy took a deep breath. "Me neither. I dreamed about the garden again, about them, Khalid and Isolde. She loves him so much it hurts. And he knows they'll be discovered, but he can't stay away." Ethan took another step. Now he was less than a meter away from her. Lucy could see the fine lines around his eyes, the shadow of his beard, the accelerated pulse in his neck. "Do you feel this?" he asked, his voice husky. "This attraction. It's not normal. It's like my body recognizes yours even before my mind can process it." "I feel it," Lucy admitted, "and it scares me, because I don't know you. But at the same time, I feel like I've known you for centuries. Ethan reached out his hand, hesitantly, trembling slightly. "May I?" Lucy nodded, her heart beating uncontrollably. Ethan touched her wrist, exactly where the crescent moon mark was. With his thumb, he traced the shape of the mark over the fabric of her blouse. The electricity was instantaneous. Lucy closed her eyes, and she saw a quick flash. Khalid kissing that exact spot, the mark. Isolde laughing, saying in Old Spanish, "My soul will know you in every life." Lucy opened her eyes. Ethan had seen it too. She could see it in his gaze. "This can't be happening," he whispered. "But it is. What do we do?" "I don't know." Matthew stirred in the crib, breaking the moment. Ethan dropped Lucy's wrist abruptly. He took 2 steps back. I should go. Let you rest." "Ethan!" He stopped, his hand on the doorknob. "Thank you," Lucy said, "for giving me a chance, a safe place for Matthew. I won't disappoint you." Ethan glanced at her over his shoulder. "You couldn't disappoint me even if you tried." And then he left, leaving Lucy alone with a sleeping baby and a heart that was beating as if it had known that man for 600 years. Because maybe it had, and that's what scared her the most. The next 7 days were the strangest of Lucy's life. During the day, she took care of Mrs. Sterling. Ethan's mother was a 65-year-old woman, kind and perceptive. The Parkinson's was still in its early stages, slight tremors in her hands, occasional difficulty with balance, but her mind was completely lucid. Mrs. Sterling liked Lucy immediately, and Lucy liked her, but the strange part wasn't the work, it was the constant feeling of déjà vu. On the 3rd day, Lucy was helping Mrs. Sterling with physical therapy in the living room when she needed an extra towel. Without thinking, she got up and went straight to the linen closet in the east hallway. Second closet on the left, middle shelf. She opened it, and there were the towels. She froze, staring at the closet. How did she know? She'd never been down that hallway before. Mrs. Sterling didn't seem to notice, but Eleanor did. The secretary was passing through the hallway. She stopped. She observed Lucy with that analytical gaze. "How did you know where the towels were? Did someone tell you?" Elena asked. Lucy blinked. Someone must have said something." "No one said anything. I've been with you since you walked into the room." Lucy had no answer. She just closed the cabinet, grabbed the towel, and went back to the living room. But she could feel Elena's eyes burning into her back. On the 5th day, something even more impossible happened. Ethan came home from work at 7 p.m., visibly stressed. "Tough meeting," he muttered as he passed Lucy in the hallway. She was leading Matthew back to his room after dinner. She should have just nodded and kept walking, but instead, she heard herself saying, "You should have some chamomile tea with honey. It always helps when you're tense." Ethan stopped, turned slowly. "How do you know I drink chamomile tea when I'm stressed?" Lucy opened her mouth, closed it. I don't know, I just thought it would help." But that wasn't true. She knew. The same way she knew where the towels were kept. The same way she knew Ethan liked his coffee black, but with a dash of cinnamon. That he had nightmares on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That he preferred to work near the window because the natural light calmed him. How did she know these things? Ethan looked at her with a mixture of fascination and fear. "You know things," he said softly. "Things you shouldn't know. I've noticed. You know where everything is in this house. You know my habits, my preferences. It's as if I've lived here before," Lucy finished. A heavy silence. "This is getting intense," Ethan said. "The visions, the dreams. I wake up at 3 a.m. every day with my heart racing because I dreamed about an execution from 600 years ago." "Me too," Lucy whispered. "I see when they were discovered. I see Khalid being arrested, Isolde screaming, and I feel it. I feel like my heart broke that day." Ethan took a step toward her. "Which part is memory, and which part is us? I don't know if there is a difference." And in that moment, in the dimly lit hallway of a mansion in 2025, Ethan Sterling and Lucy Morales understood an impossible truth. They weren't just Ethan and Lucy. They were also Khalid and Isolde, two souls who refused to forget, two lives intertwined through the centuries. And the question wasn't whether this was real anymore. The question was, what were they going to do about it? Have you ever wondered if you know someone from another life? If that inexplicable connection has a reason? If the people you love have been with you before, in other forms, in other times? Think about it, and maybe you'll start to notice the coincidences that aren't coincidences, the recognition that shouldn't exist, the souls that your soul knows. On the seventh day, Elena Vega made a decision. She had spent a week observing. Ethan distracted, lost in thought, looking at Lucy as if she were the answer to a question he'd spent his life asking. Lucy knowing impossible things, moving through the mansion as if she had an internal map, knowing Ethan's preferences that had taken Elena years to discover, and the marks. Elena had seen them by chance. Ethan's when he took off his jacket during a meeting, Lucy's when her sleeve rode up while she was playing with Matthew. Identical, impossible. Elena didn't believe in coincidences. Not after 20 years managing the life of a billionaire. Not after seeing the impossible become reality more times than she could count. So she did what she always did when she needed answers. She investigated. She started by searching. Birthmarks, crescent moon, historical significance. The results led her to medieval symbols, amulets of protection, and then an academic article about Spanish royalty from the 15th century. In the article, there was a reference. Princess Isolde of Aragon, 1425, died at age 18 of unknown causes, buried with a silver crescent moon medallion. Elena felt a chill. She clicked on another link, archaeological finds from the Kingdom of Aragon, and there it was, a photo. Restored portrait of Princess Isolde of Aragon, painted in 1424. Elena almost dropped her phone. The face in the painting, the shape of the green eyes, the curve of the chin, the soft smile. It was Lucy. It wasn't similar. It was identical, as if someone had taken a photo of Lucy and inserted it into a painting from 600 years ago. Impossible, but the evidence was right there, in pixels, in documented history. Elena continued her research. She found more, a historical record. Princess Isolde of Aragon betrothed to Duke of Castile, engagement broken off under mysterious circumstances. 3 days after the public execution of a Moorish slave for an unspecified crime, court rumors suggested a forbidden romantic connection. Eleanor read it again and again. Executed, Moorish slave, princess died of heartbreak, and suddenly everything made sense. The visions that Ethan had vaguely mentioned during a meeting, thinking Elena wasn't paying attention. The way Lucy and Ethan looked at each other, like souls, recognizing souls, the identical marks, the impossible knowledge. It wasn't madness, it was reincarnation. Elena spent that night sleepless, researching more. She found the record of a silver crescent moon medallion found in Isolde's tomb. She found references to a slave named Khalid in the palace records. And the next day, she went to Ethan. "Mr. Sterling," she said, entering his office without knocking. Something she never did. "I need to show you something." Ethan was sitting at his desk, looking out the window. He didn't even seem to notice her entrance. "She's out there," he said distractedly, "in the garden, with Matthew. I can't stop looking at her, Elena. And the worst part is, I don't feel guilty. I feel like I have the right, like she's mine." "She is," Elena said. Ethan finally looked at her. "What?" Eleanor placed the tablet on the desk in front of him, opened the image of the portrait of Princess Isolde of Aragon. Ethan looked and froze completely. "What? What is this?" "Princess Isolde of Aragon, painted in 1424, died in 1425 at 18 years old. 3 days after the execution of a Moorish slave named Khalid. Ethan couldn't take his eyes off the image. "It's Lucy," he whispered. "It's exactly Lucy. I know. How is this possible?" Elena took a deep breath. "Mr. Sterling, Ethan, in 20 years of working with you, I've never lied, so I'm not going to start now. I don't know how it's possible, but I'm seeing the evidence, a portrait from 600 years ago, a face identical to Lucy's, historical record of a forbidden love between a princess and a slave, execution, death from heartbreak, and the two of you, with identical marks, shared visions, impossible recognition. You think that we are reincarnated? I think some connections transcend the explainable." Ethan was trembling. Elena had never seen him like this, not during the financial crisis of '08, not during the divorce, never. He grabbed the tablet, zoomed in on the image, studied every detail of Isolde's face, and then, with a voice that cracked, he said, "I lost her once. I am not going to lose her again." Elena nodded. "Then stop fighting it." "Gain, how do I stop fighting something that defies all logic? You accept that not everything needs logic. Some things are destiny." Ethan gazed out the window again. Lucy was sitting on the lawn, Matthew on her lap, laughing at something the baby had done, sunlight creating golden halos in her chestnut hair, and Ethan knew, logic or not, impossible or not, real or not, he loved that woman. Not because he'd met her a week ago, but because he'd known her for 600 years, and this time, nothing was going to separate them. Not social class, not judgment, not fate itself. Nothing. That same night, Ethan made a decision. If there were answers, he would find them, no matter how impossible, no matter how irrational. He needed to know the truth, so he did something he never imagined he would do. He scheduled a regressive hypnosis session. Dr. Samuel Abernathy was a respected psychiatrist specializing in regression therapy. He had an office in Lincoln Park, a discreet clientele, an impeccable reputation. Ethan arrived at the office at 10:08 a.m. on a Tuesday. He told no one where he was going, not Elena, not Lucy, especially not Lucy. Dr. Abernathy was a man of about 55, graying hair, wire-rimmed glasses, a calm, professional voice. "Mr. Sterling," he said. After Ethan vaguely explained the reason for his visit, "Regressive hypnosis is not magic. I cannot guarantee that you will see past lives. What usually happens is that the mind relaxes and deep memories surface. Sometimes they are real memories from childhood. Sometimes they are symbolic constructions of the unconscious." "I understand," Ethan said. "I just need to try." The office had low lights, a comfortable recliner, soft music playing in the background. Ethan lay down. Dr. Abernathy began with breathing exercises, then a countdown, a monotonous, calming voice guiding Ethan into a state of deep relaxation. "Relax your forehead, your eyes, your jaw. Let your entire body sink into the chair. You are safe. Calm. Your mind is open." Ethan felt his muscles relaxing, the tension dissolving, consciousness floating. "Now," Dr. Abernathy said, "I'm going to count from 10 to 1. With each number, you will go deeper. When I reach 1, you will be in a state where you can access deep memories, memories that your everyday consciousness cannot reach. 10, 9, 8. The world around Ethan began to fade. 7, 6, 5. He felt as if he were floating, disconnected from his body. 4, 3, 2, 1. And then Ethan was no longer in the office. He was somewhere else. Another time, 1425, the Scottish Highlands. The vision wasn't gradual this time. It was instantaneous, total, like waking from a dream and realizing it was real. Ethan looked down. He didn't see his Brioni suit. He saw rough, tattered wool, bare feet, hands darker than his own, scars on his wrists, iron chains. He was kneeling in a field, tending to sheep, the wind whipping around him. And he knew, without needing to ask, without needing to confirm, he was Alistair, a serf bound to the MacLeod clan. Subject to the whims of Laird MacLeod, someone approached from behind, light footsteps on the heather. Alistair turned, and there she was. Lady Isolde MacLeod, 18 years old, dressed in emerald green, red hair cascading down her back in perfect curls, blue eyes sparkling with intelligence and compassion. Not Lucy, but at the same time, she was Lucy in every detail that mattered. "You care for the sheep," Isolde said. Her voice was soft but curious. "Why do you take such care?" Alistair hesitated. Serfs did not speak to ladies. It was forbidden, dangerous. But something in her eyes made him want to answer. "They provide for us," he said quietly. "Without them, we are nothing." Isolde smiled, a smile that lit up the entire field. "And you believe that?" Isolde asked. "That we are reliant upon the land?" Alistair looked at her and knew, in that moment, that his life had just changed forever. "I do," he replied. The vision accelerated. Ethan saw months pass in seconds, secret meetings by the lock every night, conversations that lasted for hours. Alistair teaching Isolde about the constellations, Isolde teaching Alistair to read and write in Gaelic, soft laughter, accidental touches that became intentional, glances that lingered a little too long. And then, the first kiss, beneath the ancient oak tree, full moon illuminating the loch. Alistair had sworn to himself that he wouldn't cross that line, but when Isolde looked at him that way, when she whispered his name like a prayer, he couldn't resist. He kissed her, and it was as if 600 years of loneliness ended all at once. The vision continued. Ethan felt every emotion, every stolen moment, every whispered promise. Alistair gave Isolde a silver pendant in the shape of a Celtic knot, stolen from a passing merchant, the only gift he could offer. Isolde wept, and in return did something permanent. She found a traveling tattoo artist, had a mark etched onto her wrist, a Celtic knot, a proof of eternal love. Alistair did the same, on his shoulder, where no one would see. "We will meet in every life," Isolde whispered, holding his hand. "These marks will ensure it. Our souls will recognize each other, no matter how much time passes." And then, the tragedy. December 23rd, 1425, a guard saw Alistair and Isolde kissing in the field at midnight. The guard ran to Laird MacLeod. Alistair was arrested immediately, beaten, thrown into a dungeon. Isolde tried to intervene, pleaded with her father, but the Laird was furious. The honor of the clan, the betrothal to the Campbell chieftain, everything was at risk. Alistair would be executed publicly, an example to all other serfs. Ethan felt it, not just watched, felt it. The terror of Alistair in the dungeon, the pain of the injuries, the despair of knowing that he would never see Isolde again. And then, the day of the execution, village square, crowd, gallows erected. Alistair was dragged out, hands bound, neck already marked by the rope, but his eyes were searching for only one thing, and they found it. Isolde running through the crowd, guards trying to hold her back, but she fought, reached him, held Alistair's hands for the last time. "I will find you in every life," she cried. "No matter where I am, my soul will always recognize yours. And I will seek you in every life," Alistair whispered back. "Even if it takes 600 years. The guards pulled her away. Alistair was led to the gallows. Ethan felt the rope around his neck. He felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He felt the pain, the panic, the darkness. And the last thing Ethan Alexander Sterling saw before everything went black was Isolde screaming his name. The vision shifted 3 days later. Isolde's room at the Drake Hotel. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't slept. Just lying in bed, clutching the crescent moon locket. weeping. On the third day, her heart simply stopped. Doctors said it was a sudden fever, but everyone knew the truth. She died of sorrow, of a broken heart, and with her last breath, Isolde whispered, "Come back!" The vision ended abruptly. Ethan lurched back in Dr. Mendoza's office with a shout, "Isolde!" He sat up suddenly in the armchair, sweating, crying, trembling. Dr. Mendoza rose, alarmed. "Mr. Sterling, are you all right?" But Ethan couldn't answer. He just sobbed, tears that weren't just his. They were Khalid's. They were from 600 years of separation. They were from a love that transcended death. "I lost her," he choked out. "I lost her, and she died because of me." Dr. Mendoza brought him water, tried to calm him, but it took 20 minutes for Ethan to breathe normally. "What did you see?" Dr. Mendoza asked gently, and Ethan told him everything, every detail. Khalid, Isolde, the forbidden love, the execution, her death. Dr. Mendoza listened in silence. When Ethan finished, the doctor said, "Sometimes, the mind creates narratives based on our unconscious fears and desires. It's a defense mechanism, really quite common." "It wasn't my mind," Ethan said with absolute certainty. "It was memory, real memory. I felt it. I lived it." Ethan left the office 2 hours later, completely transformed. He had no more doubts. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't imagination. He was Khalid. Lucy Morales was Isolde, and 600 years later, they had reunited. Ethan drove back to the mansion at 3 p.m., walked through the front door, went straight to the living room where he knew Lucy would be with her son and mother, and there she was, sitting on the sofa. Matthew, sleeping in a bassinet beside her. Mrs. Morales, dozing in the armchair. Lucy, reading a book. She looked up when Ethan entered and immediately knew something had changed. "Ethan," she stood, dropping the book. "What happened?" Ethan crossed the room in 3 strides, stopped in front of her, eyes red, face stained with ancient tears. "I saw it," he said. "I saw everything." "Saw what?" "Us, 600 years ago. I did the regression hypnosis. And Lucy, I saw it. The garden, the execution. Me, I died on that gallows. And you died 3 days later." Lucy brought a hand to her mouth. "No, I died in your arms first. And you couldn't bear it. Your heart just stopped. This can't be real." "It is real," Ethan said, his voice broken. "I felt it. It wasn't a vision. It was memory. Lucy, I remember. I remember loving you so much that I'd rather die than be apart. I remember your promise. I remember everything." Lucy began to tremble, tears streaming down her face. Ethan reached out, touched her face, and the moment his skin touched hers, the vision came. But this time, they both saw it, together, simultaneously. It wasn't a flash, it was total immersion. They saw their first meeting in the garden. They saw the 6 months of secret love. They saw the promises, the markings, the discovery, the imprisonment, the execution, the death. They saw it all, side by side, like witnesses to their own past lives. When the vision ended, both were on the floor, Ethan kneeling, Lucy sitting back against the sofa, both weeping. Mrs. Morales had awakened, but remained silent, watching, understanding more than she should. "It was you," Lucy whispered. "All this time, in every dream, in every memory that wasn't mine. It was you, and you were her," Ethan replied. "Isolde, my princess, my soulmate. I looked for you in every person I met, and I never found you, until that night in the rain." "Why?" Lucy asked. "Why did we find each other again?" Ethan shook his head. "I don't know. A promise? Destiny? Love that refused to die? And what do we do now?" Before Ethan could answer, Lucy stood abruptly. As if in a trance, she walked to the other side of the room, There was a grand piano, an instrument Ethan rarely played, a legacy from his grandfather. Lucy sat down on the bench, looked at the keys as if seeing them for the first time. "You play piano?" Ethan asked, confused. "No," Lucy whispered. "I never learned." But her hands moved across the keys, fingers finding positions they shouldn't know, and she began to play. The melody was ancient, medieval, nothing that existed in 2024. Notes in a scale that wasn't used anymore. A rhythm Ethan didn't recognize, but at the same time, he recognized it perfectly, because it was the song that Khalid used to hum to Isolde on nights in the garden, a Moorish melody he learned in childhood. "How do you know that song?" Ethan whispered, approaching her. "I don't know," Lucy replied, tears falling on the keys. "But my fingers do, as if I've played it 1,000 times." She continued playing. The melody filled the room, ancient, impossible, beautiful, and when she finished the last chord, Lucy collapsed. Ethan caught her before she fell, held her against his chest, both crying, both finally accepting the truth. They weren't crazy. They were souls who loved 600 years ago, separated by violent death and tragedy, but reunited by a promise that transcended centuries. "I'm not going to lose you again," Ethan whispered into her hair. "No matter what happens, no matter who judges, no matter anything. I lost you once, and it took 600 years to find you. I'm not letting you go." Lucy pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "Ethan, what if it happens again? What if the tragedy repeats? Then we face it together," Ethan said. "This time there's no king to separate us, no execution, no death, just us, and the choice to finally be together." "Are you sure?" Lucy asked. "I'm a single mother. You're a billionaire. The world can judge all it wants," Ethan interrupted. "But my soul has known yours for 600 years, and that's all that matters." Lucy looked at him. Ethan Alexander Sterling, 38 years old, billionaire, CEO, a rational man who didn't believe in destiny, but who was kneeling in front of her, crying, declaring a love that spanned 6 centuries, and Lucy understood. Some stories don't end, they just pause, waiting for the right moment to continue. 600 years was a long pause, but finally, they were together again. If you believe in soulmates, if you believe that true love transcends time and space, if you've ever looked at someone and felt a recognition that defies explanation, then you know it's not craziness, it's not coincidence. It's destiny fulfilling an ancient promise, and sometimes, love is too strong to die, even after 600 years. That night, Ethan and Lucy sat in the garden, Matthew sleeping peacefully in a stroller beside them. Stars glittered above, precisely where Khalid and Isolde used to meet 6 centuries before. "Do you think they knew," Lucy asked softly, "that we would find each other again?" Ethan gazed at their marks, a crescent moon on his shoulder, a crescent moon on her wrist. "They made sure we would know," he replied. "The marks, they were maps, guiding our souls back to each other." Lucy touched the mark on her wrist. "I always thought it was just a birthmark, something random." "It wasn't random, it was a promise." Ethan took her hand, intertwined their fingers, and for the first time in 600 years, Khalid and Isolde were holding hands again. No fear, no hiding, no impending tragedy, only love. Love that had waited 6 centuries, love that had survived death itself, love that was finally free to exist. "I love you," Ethan said. "I don't know if it's too soon to say that, but I feel like I've loved you for 600 years, so maybe it's not too soon at all." Lucy smiled through her tears. "I love you too, and you're right. It's not too soon. It's late. 600 years late." They kissed there, under the same stars, in the same garden, fulfilling a promise they made in another life. "I will find you in every lifetime, Promise fulfilled. Finally, a week later, Eleanor walked into Ethan's office, a package in her hands. "Mr. Sterling," she said, "you need to see this." Ethan was seated at his desk, Lucy by his side. They were reviewing plans, not business plans, life plans, future plans, how to navigate a world that couldn't understand what they had. Eleanor placed the package on the desk, opened it. Inside was a file folder, and inside the folder, evidence. "I contacted the National Museum of Spanish History," Eleanor explained. "I told them about the marks, the visions. I requested access to the archives concerning Princess Isolde of Aragon." Ethan and Lucy exchanged a look, then looked back at the folder. Eleanor opened it slowly. The first page was a high-resolution copy of the portrait of Princess Isolde, painted in 1424. Lucy made a small sound. It was her face, exactly her face, as if someone had taken a photo of her and transposed it onto canvas 600 years ago. The second page was a historical document, an inventory record of Isolde's tomb, opened by archaeologists in 1987. "Item found," Ethan read aloud. "A silver locket in the shape of a crescent moon, inscribed with the words in ancient Arabic, 'My love transcends time.'" Lucy brought her hand to her mouth. Eleanor turned the page. There was a photograph, a photo of the actual locket, silver, oxidized by time, but perfectly preserved, in the shape of a crescent moon, exactly as Ethan had seen it in the vision. "There's more," Eleanor said softly. She turned more pages, records from the palace from 1425, and there, an entry. December 23rd, 1425, public execution of Moorish slave Khalid ibn Rashid for the crime of defilement against Princess Isolde. Sentence, death by hanging. Execution completed at noon, and 3 days later, another entry. December 26th, 1425, Princess Isolde of Aragon deceased. Official cause, sudden fever, cause rumored by the court. Heartbreak, buried with silver locket that belonged to the executed slave. Ethan couldn't breathe. Lucy was crying silently. "It's all here," Eleanor said. "It's not legend, it's not myth, it's documented history. You two, Khalid and Isolde, forbidden love, execution, death by grief, all real." Ethan looked at Lucy. "And this proves," he whispered. "Proves we're not crazy," Lucy finished. Eleanor placed the last page on the table. It was a recent academic article, 2023, about documented reincarnation phenomena. The author mentioned the case of Khalid and Isolde as one of the best documented examples of love that possibly transcended generations. And it ended with a line, "If birthmarks can be genetically transmitted, why not memories of souls?" Ethan took Lucy's hand, intertwined their fingers, looked at the marks, crescent moons, 600-year-old maps guiding them back to each other. "We have the proof," he said. "We have history. We have documents. We have everything. But even without any of this, even if the whole world said we were insane, I would still choose you." Lucy smiled through her tears. "And I would choose you in every life." Eleanor left the office silently, leaving them alone with the impossible truth that now had historical validation. Love that transcended 600 years wasn't fantasy. It was a documented fact, but it wasn't all easy. 2 weeks later, the board of directors of Sterling Holdings called an emergency meeting. Ethan had been seen publicly with Lucy. Dinners, walks, holding hands. A 38-year-old billionaire with a 28-year-old former homeless woman. Single mother, employee. The media was starting to notice. The gossip was spreading, and the board was not happy. "Mr. Sterling," Richard Meyer, chairman of the board, began, "your personal life is your own, but when it affects the company's image, it doesn't," Ethan interrupted. "My personal life has no bearing on my ability to lead this company." The stock is down 3% this week, another board member said. Investors are concerned with your situation. My situation? Ethan repeated, his voice dangerously calm. You mean my relationship with Lucy Morales? Uncomfortable silence around the table. With all due respect, Richard finally said, she doesn't come from our world. No education, no resources. She has a child from another man. And Mr. Sterling, you are the face of this company. Billions of dollars depend on your reputation. Ethan stood up, looked at each person in the room. Men and women who had worked for him for years, who made millions because of his decisions. You're right about one thing, he said. Lucy doesn't come from our world. She comes from a world where people sleep on the streets to protect their children from the rain, where dignity is worth more than money, where love is more important than appearances. Ethan, Richard started, and you're also right that I am the face of this company, Ethan continued. So listen closely to what I'm about to say. Lucy Morales is the woman I love, not for a week, not for a year, for 600 years. And if you can't accept that, if you think my happiness is less important than 3% of the stock, then accept my resignation. The silence was absolute. What? Richard whispered. I resign as CEO, Ethan said clearly. I retain my shares. I retain my stake. But I will no longer be CEO. Promote Eleanor to president. She's more competent than I am anyway. Ethan walked to the door, stopped, turned around, and for the record, Lucy has more dignity in one finger than all of you combined. She saved me, not from financial ruin, but from existential emptiness, and that is priceless. He left the room, and for the first time in 15 years, he felt completely free, because Khalid had lost everything for loving Isolde, but this time Ethan would choose Lucy above all else, and no advice, no public opinion, no judgment would ever change that. Some stories are worth more than empires. This story shouldn't even exist. A billionaire and a housekeeper, soulmates for 600 years, identical birthmarks, shared visions, love that defies death, but it does, and it's happening now, at this very moment, somewhere in the world. Two people are recognizing each other, feeling something they can't explain, love that transcends logic. 3 months later, Ethan and Lucy were living together in the mansion, not as employer and employee, but as partners, as souls who had finally found each other again. Matthew was 5 months old, growing strong and healthy. He called Ethan Dad, unaware that he wasn't his biological father, but Ethan didn't care, because love doesn't need biology to be real. Mrs. Sterling was radiant. Her health had even improved, as if having true love in the house cured more than any medicine. And Eleanor had been promoted to president of Sterling Holdings. And surprisingly, the stock rose 7% in the first month, because competence always triumphs over politics. Ethan didn't miss the position. He spent his days with Lucy, playing with Matthew, planting white roses in the garden, exactly where Khalid used to plant them 600 years before. At night, they'd sit under the stars, and Ethan would tell Lucy about the constellations. Just as Khalid had told Isolde, some things never change. In March of 2026, Ethan and Lucy traveled to Spain. They went to the National Museum of History in Madrid. They requested special permission to see the artifacts of Princess Isolde of Aragon. The curator, an elderly man named Miguel, led them to a room in the back, climate-controlled, protected, and there, in the glass case, was the medallion, a crescent moon, oxidized silver, an inscription in Arabic, "My love transcends time." Lucy began to cry, because it was real. It was all real. Can we touch it? Ethan asked. Miguel hesitated, then nodded. Only for a moment. He opened the case, carefully placed the medallion in Ethan's palm, and the moment the metal touched his skin, Ethan felt it. It wasn't a vision. It was a sensation, a physical memory. Khalid holding that exact object, giving it to Isolde, promising eternal love. Lucy touched the medallion too, closed her eyes, and saw Isolde receiving the gift, crying with joy, kissing Khalid under the moon. When they opened their eyes, Miguel was looking at them with a strange expression. "You felt it, didn't you?" he said softly. "I've worked here for 40 years. I've seen hundreds of people look at this medallion, but you too, you touched it like it belonged to you." "It did," Lucy whispered. "In another life." Miguel smiled, a smile of someone who had seen too much to doubt the impossible. Afterward, Ethan and Lucy went to the site where Princess Isolde was buried, a small chapel outside of Zaragoza. There was a simple headstone, Isolde of Aragon, 1407-1425. Beloved princess, pure heart. Ethan and Lucy knelt, placed white roses in front of the headstone. "Thank you," Ethan whispered, "for never giving up, for leaving those marks, for ensuring that we would find each other." Lucy touched the headstone. "Promise kept," she said, 600 years later, but kept. And there, in a silent chapel in Spain, Khalid and Isolde finally had the closure they never achieved in 1425. Love recognized, love honored, eternal love. In December of 2026, exactly 1 year after they met, Ethan and Lucy got married. It wasn't a big wedding. No 500 guests, no press. It was in the garden of the mansion, under the same moon, in the same spot where Khalid and Isolde used to meet. Only 10 people. Mrs. Sterling, Eleanor, a few close friends, and Matthew, 1 year and 3 months old, as the ring bearer. Ethan wore a simple suit. Lucy wore a white dress that Eleanor had helped her choose. And when Ethan saw Lucy walking through the garden toward him, for a second, just a second, he saw Isolde. Gold dress, black hair, green eyes shining. He blinked, and it was Lucy again. His Lucy, his Isolde, his soulmate of 600 years. The vows were simple. "I, Ethan Alexander Sterling, promise to love you, not only in this life, but in all the lives to come, because my soul knows yours, and no force in the universe can separate what was always meant to be one. I, Lucy Isabel Morales, promise to love you through time, through death, through everything, because you are my home, no matter where I am. When I'm with you, I'm home." They exchanged rings, not of gold, but of silver, with small crescent moons engraved inside. And when they kissed, it was as if 600 years of separation ended all at once. 2 souls, 1 story, eternal love. The next day, Ethan legally adopted Matthew Ethan Sterling Morales. And when they signed the papers, when Matthew officially became his son, Ethan cried. Because in 1425, Khalid never had a family. He died alone, without children, without a future. But in 2026, Ethan had everything. A wife, a son, love, a future, complete redemption. 6 months later, Ethan and Lucy opened an NGO, Crescent Moon, aid for single, homeless mothers. The initial funding was $10 million, Ethan's own money. The program offered temporary housing, professional training, medical care, daycare for babies. Everything Lucy needed and didn't have when she was on the streets. In the first year, Crescent Moon helped 47 mothers and 52 children. In the second year, 120. In the third year, they opened 3 units in different cities, and in each unit, in the garden, Ethan planted white roses. Because love that transcends time must be multiplied, because miracles must be shared, because some people get a second chance. And the only way to honor it is to give a second chance to others. Today, in 2028, Ethan is 40 years old, Lucy is 30, Matthew is 3.5. They live in the same mansion, but now there's more laughter, more love, more life. Ethan is no longer CEO, but he's happier than he's ever been. He works part-time as a consultant, spends the rest of his time with his family and the NGO. Lucy went back to work as a nurse, twice a week, at the public hospital, because caring for people is who she is. Matthew goes to daycare, calls Ethan Dad, unaware of the whole story. One day they'll tell him about Khalid and Isolde, about promises made 600 years ago, about a love that transcended death itself. But for now, Ethan just needs to know he is loved. Every night, after tucking Matthew into bed, Ethan and Lucy sit in the garden, in the same place, beneath the same stars. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the moon is full and the wind whispers through the roses, they hear echoes of ancient laughter, of promises whispered in Old Spanish, of a love that never truly died. It only waited 600 years until two souls were ready to find each other again. Do you have someone like that? Someone you look at and feel a recognition you can't explain? A connection that shouldn't exist, but does? Maybe it's not coincidence. Maybe it's soul recognizing soul. Maybe you also have a history that began long before this life. Think about it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll begin to understand. Some connections have no explanation because they existed before you were born and will continue to exist after you're gone. This isn't the end of a story. It's the continuation of something that started 600 years ago, and that will continue, life after life, century after century. Because when two souls mark each other, when they make a promise beneath the crescent moon, when they love so deeply that even death can't separate them, they always find their way back to each other. Ethan Sterling and Lucy Morales didn't meet on December 15th, 2025. They met, and that's the difference. The end, no, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. Because for soulmates, it never really ends. It just continues, in different forms, in different times, in different lives, but always together, always. 600 years they waited, but it was worth every second, because true love, love that marks souls with crescent moons, love that promises, I'll find you in every life, that love never dies, it just waits for its moment, and when it arrives, it's magical, it's impossible, it's real, and it's forever.